Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining us for our Monday weather update recorded on October the 16th. And this week, well, we've got rain, we've got some wind, but it is not as stormy as it has been over the past couple of days or over the last week or so. Let's take a look at the animated wind map. This is the main feature, low pressure in the Tasman Sea, driving in a big southerly flow for the eastern side of Australia. And for New Zealand, we've got a northerly coming down. So it's warm on our side, cooler on the other side of the Tasman. Over the next day or so, this moves up and around sort of northern areas. It falls apart and doesn't bring in the rain that you might think for some of the North Island. But the west coast of the South Island certainly does have a lot of rain on the way. This is just for the next 2 days, showing up to 150 millimetres coming. Now, that's not necessarily newsworthy for the west coast, but what is newsworthy is the fact that some of that rain goes right up to the north and spills over. So very dry places like Marlborough and Nelson have a chance of getting some rain from this event. Go to ruralweather.co.nz, have a look at your local totals there. It's easier than this map. This map is just a glance to see where it's going to be. So most of the wet weather is on the west coast here. The North Island at the bottom end of the scale for the next 2 days. The low pressure zone is going to sort of move to the north of the country and fall apart. It's not going to move up and into the North Island the way you might imagine. So this is how it will look. On Tuesday at lunchtime, New Zealand time, we've got this area of rain that's stuck over the South Island, spilling over into Nelson, Marlborough, and even into Canterbury. So this is good news for those that are farming and growing and worried about how dry it's going to become over the months ahead. Getting some wet weather at this time of the year, very welcome. And in the North Island, a lot of high pressure. And look at these subtropical winds from off the map. So it's certainly not going to be cold for the top of New Zealand, but it will be cooler along the eastern side of Australia. By Wednesday, the low moves to the north of the country. High pressure is out to the east. That is kind of pushing back against it. So we do have a bit of a breezy north to northeasterly wind. Might be a little bit windy in some areas, but it doesn't look too stormy at this stage. But it does drive in a bit of wet weather. This is just showing you the risk zone. It doesn't mean it rains the whole time through there. Pale blue usually just means showers and broken up bits of rain. When you see it sort of green and yellow, that's when it's more of a set-in rain band. So by Thursday, high pressure connecting up here over New Zealand. So this low pressure zone is sort of bunny hopping over the top of the country. This does happen every now and then. It's a little unusual, but it does happen. And it's just because the highs and the lows are always moving around a little bit and they don't necessarily know that we're sitting down there below them. So the low pressure zone kind of tracks up here around these highs, which means if it stays like this, it'll be mostly dry over the country, but there could be a bit of cloud in between here and also some wind and rain just to the very north, up around Kaitaia, Whangarei, those areas. Just keep an eye on that. It might drop a little further south. If it does that, it gets a bit wetter for some of you. Oh, I didn't animate it. My apologies. Let's get on to Friday. All right, so no real change from Thursday to Friday. So that low gets stuck up there, but you can see why Northland might have rain icons sort of showing up for a number of days and mostly settled for the rest of New Zealand, mostly settled in Australia as well. And then we go on towards the weekend, that low, look at that, it's almost disappeared, but it hasn't completely. So Gisborne, East Cape area, you might be getting a bit of either rain or some light showers. But at the other end of New Zealand, that's probably the next main headline. We've got another cold change coming through. Sorry, Southland. You had a cold week last week. You warm up a little bit this week, but it disappears on Saturday. And maybe a bit of good news here for Australia. We've got another area of low pressure, but don't get your hopes up. It is surrounded by this big smiley face of high pressure. And so that cuts off a lot of the airflows to bring in some moisture. So it kind of cannibalizes itself and it uses up its own energy. But still, well, worth keeping an eye on that over the days ahead to see if it does drive in some rain here for the wheat belt. I know many of you do want some rain. That is all from me. Back again tomorrow with our next update. We'll see you then.